You've seen Godzilla demolish cities and battle everything from three-headed dragons to robot versions of himself. But how would the king of monsters fare against horror's most terrifying monsters? I've analyzed Godzilla's abilities across every film era, from his atomic breath that can drill to the Earth's core to his nuclear pulse that flattens everything in its path. Most horror monsters would be nothing more than a light workout for Godzilla. But as we climb the ladder of terror today, he'll face challenges unlike anything in the Monsterverse. By the end of this video, we'll encounter one ancient cosmic entity so powerful that even Godzilla might not be able to beat it. So let's get ready to find out if there's a horror monster out there that can finally dethrone the king of monsters. Flapjack is the king of cuddles, and he'd like to say that everyone should like and subscribe, because if they do, he'll get extra pets and boops on the nose tonight. Thank you. All right, let's start with something a little different. Cocaine Bear. Yeah, that's right. For those who've missed this cinematic masterpiece, imagine a regular black bear who stumbled across a drug smuggler's lost stash and went on the wildest bender in animal history. This coked up grizzly terrorized a national park, moving faster than bears should move and attacking with the rage of 1,000 Karens who just got told that Starbucks is closed. Basically, if you're not an intellectual like me and you really need to understand this movie, it's a bear on cocaine. That's the whole premise. And honestly, if you haven't seen it, I'm not sure whether to tell you to rush out and watch it immediately or avoid it entirely. Your call. So how does a drugged up forest friend stack up against the king of monsters? Well, Cocaine Bear has some advantages, mainly enhanced speed, aggression, and unpredictability. The drugs make it move faster than a normal bear, feel less pain, and act completely erratically. It's like trying to predict what your drunk uncle will say at Thanksgiving dinner. Impossible, but that's where the advantages end. We're talking about a slightly bigger, a slightly angrier bear versus a radioactive lizard that's taller than most skyscrapers. Godzilla, meanwhile, has survived nukes, battled alien three-headed dragons, and has atomic breath that can drill to the Earth's core. It's like comparing your annoying neighbor's chihuahua to a pack of wolves. Picture the scenario. Cocaine Bear is on its drug-fueled rampage through the forest when suddenly the trees start shaking. Birds flee, water in puddles vibrates like that scene in Jurassic Park, and then an enormous foot crashes down, flattening acres of forest. Our furry friend looks up, way up, to see Godzilla towering above the tree line. The bear, being absolutely wired on cocaine, doesn't even hesitate. It charges directly at the foot of the Monster King, claws out, ready for the most mismatched fight in history. But believe me, the bear thinks it can win. Cause why? Cause it's Cocaine Bear. The outcome, look, I hate to break it to you, and I know I'm about to make everyone in the comments mad, and everyone's gonna start saying justice for Cocaine Bear, but this isn't even a contest. Best case scenario to Cocaine Bear is that Godzilla doesn't even notice the bear exists. Worst case, one casual tail swipe and Cocaine Bear becomes a smear across 3 different countries. If Godzilla actually bothered to use his atomic breath, we wouldn't even have bear remains to identify, just a cocaine-scented crater. The entire fight would last approximately 1.7 seconds, and that's if Godzilla was moving in slow motion. Even if we gave Cocaine Bear a mountain of drugs, the outcome wouldn't change. I'm sorry this isn't exactly the epic battle you were hoping for, but why is this such a mismatch? Well, simple power scaling. Cocaine Bear is fundamentally a bear on cocaine, maybe 7 feet tall on its hind legs. Godzilla, depending on which version we're talking about, stands anywhere between 150 to 400 feet tall. The bear's claws, while still scary for hikers, couldn't even penetrate Godzilla's scales. And this is a creature that regularly tanks military weapons, monster attacks, and even nukes. Plus, let's be real, Godzilla literally feeds on radiation. For all we know, the trace chemicals in the cocaine might actually give him a slight buzz at most. Sorry, Cocaine Bear fans, but your favorite movie monster would be nothing more than a slightly annoying itch to the king of monsters, if he even noticed it at all. If you thought a coked up bear was easy prey for Godzilla, our next contender might prove that sometimes the smallest threats can be the deadliest. This microscopic Martian organism has the entire crew of the International Space Station running for their lives. But can it handle 400 feet of radioactive lizard? Now we're stepping up our game with Calvin, the star of the sci-fi horror film Life. And I know what you're thinking, a tiny alien blob versus Godzilla? Come on. But don't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, don't judge a murderous space organism by its initial single-celled appearance. Calvin starts microscopic, but doesn't stay that way. This Martian nightmare grows faster than your credit card debt after Christmas, adapting to whatever environment it encounters. What makes Calvin scary isn't its size, it's how smart and adaptable it is. This thing figured out how to escape containment on the International Space Station, picked off highly trained astronauts one by one, and learn from every encounter. It has incredible strength for its size, can regenerate from injuries, and absorb nutrients from anything it touches. Basically, it's the alien version of that one friend who's inexplicably good at everything they try. You know the one. We all hate that friend. So the big question, could Calvin actually pose a threat to Godzilla? Let's imagine the scenario. Calvin lands on Earth in a crashed space capsule. It escapes, finds some unfortunate wildlife to consume, and starts growing. By the time Godzilla notices something's wrong, Calvin might be the size of a car or bigger. Calvin would likely try to approach Godzilla, seeing him as the ultimate food source. Basically, it's a bunch of delicious nutrients and radiation to absorb for him. But here's where Calvin's space adventure takes a tragic turn. Godzilla's body isn't just big, it's radioactive. The very thing Calvin wants to feed on would likely be toxic to it in such massive quantities. It's like a kid who wants to eat an entire cake. Sounds great in theory, devastating in practice. Even if Calvin could handle the radiation, Godzilla's regenerative abilities are off the charts. The monster vs. Godzilla can heal from devastating wounds almost instantly thanks to his nuclear heart. Let's say Calvin somehow managed to attach itself to Godzilla and tried to penetrate his scales. Those scales have withstood nuclear blasts, meteor impacts, and attacks from other monsters. Calvin's relatively small mass would struggle to do meaningful damage before Godzilla noticed the irritation. And what happens when Godzilla notices something annoying on his skin? Nuclear pulse. That's right, Godzilla can release waves of nuclear energy from his entire body, effectively creating a radiation bomb that extends several hundred feet in every direction. The outcome? Poor Calvin gets either cooked by radiation, shaken off like a flea, crushed by Godzilla rolling over, or vaporized by a casual sweep of atomic breath. While Calvin was the apex predator on the space station, it's playing in an entirely different league with Godzilla. It's like watching a college football star join the NFL and suddenly realizing everyone else is bigger, stronger, and has been doing this for a lot longer. The only scenario where Calvin poses any threat is if Godzilla somehow swallowed it whole and it managed to survive the intense radiation inside Godzilla's body long enough to do internal damage. But given that Godzilla's entire being is powered by nuclear energy, his insides are probably the least hospitable environment imaginable for any organism, no matter how adaptable. Sorry, Calvin, you should have stayed on Mars. Calvin may be adaptable, but even advanced alien biology has its limits. Our next horror icon takes adaptability to a whole new level, using the power of her mind to throw cars, start fires, and bring an entire town to its knees. But is telekinesis enough when facing the king of monsters? Now, we're bringing high school drama to kaiju levels with Carrie White, everyone's favorite telekinetic prom queen. If you've never seen Carrie, first of all, what's wrong with you? It's a classic. This poor, bullied teenage girl discovers she can move things with her mind when she gets upset, and boy, does she get upset. After the most epic prank in prom history involving a bucket of pig's blood, Carrie unleashes her full power and turns her high school into a slaughterhouse. Carrie's powers are nothing to sneeze at. She can lock doors with her mind, fling cars across parking lots, start fires, crush people, and bring down entire buildings. In her final form, she's essentially a walking natural disaster. Her telekinesis seems to have no upper limit when she's pushed to emotional extremes. The angrier she gets, the more powerful she becomes. Sounds a bit like a certain radioactive lizard we know, doesn't it? But let's be real about the matchup. Carrie's most impressive feat is destroying her high school and a chunk of her town. Godzilla destroys entire cities just by taking a casual stroll. It's like comparing your kitchen blender to a nuclear power plant. Both can make things go boom, but the scale is just a tiny bit different. Imagine the scenario. Carrie, fresh from her prom massacre, is walking down a destroyed street when the ground begins to shake. Buildings crumble as a massive tail sweeps through downtown. Godzilla has arrived, possibly drawn by the chaotic energy of Carrie's telekinetic outburst. Carrie, already in full rage mode, tries to use her powers against the king of monsters. She might actually manage to get Godzilla's attention. Maybe she flings a few cars at him or tries to telekinetically hold him in place. For a brief moment, Godzilla might even feel a slight resistance, like wearing a slightly too tight shirt. But remember, this is a creature that shrugs off nuclear bombs like they're spitballs. The outcome? Carrie's impressive powers are simply outmatched by Godzilla's scale and resilience. She might be able to telekinetically lift objects weighing several tons, but Godzilla weighs roughly 100,000 tons. Her brain would short circuit trying to hold him back, and the moment Godzilla decides to use his atomic breath, game over. No amount of telekinesis can stop a beam that can drill to the Earth's core. The sad truth is that Carrie's greatest weakness, her emotional instability, would be her downfall. She's used to being the scariest thing around, but facing something like Godzilla would break her concentration through sheer terror, and without her focus, her powers falter. It would be like watching a toddler have a tantrum in front of a hurricane. Tragic, but ultimately ineffective. In the end, Carrie's rage-fueled power fantasy would meet its match in Godzilla. Sorry, Carrie, but maybe try picking on someone your own size next time. Though I'm not sure who that would be. 11 from Stranger Things, maybe? Telekinesis might impress at the prom, but Godzilla's about to face something much more familiar. Another city-destroying monster. The Cloverfield monster brought New York to its knees. But is this the kaiju showdown Godzilla's been waiting for, or will the mysterious creature prove to be more than meets the eye? Now this is what I'm talking about. Finally, a proper monster fight. The Cloverfield monster, or Clover to you intellectuals out there, is the kind of threat Godzilla typically handles before breakfast. This massive creature tore through New York City like it was made of cardboard, shrugging off military attacks and causing absolute chaos. Plus, it has those creepy parasite things that fall off its body and bite people. Gross. Reminds me of the time I had bed bugs, which was last week. But here's the thing. The Cloverfield monster is basically the new kid on the kaiju block. It's like when your little cousin shows up at the family barbecue thinking they're top shit because they want to fight at school. Then they meet your uncle who's drank far too much, who's a professional boxer, and suddenly there's a funeral plan for next weekend. That's Clover meeting Godzilla. Don't ask me about that story. I'm sensitive and I don't want to talk about it. Let's break down what happened in Cloverfield. The Cloverfield monster stands somewhere around 300 feet tall. Impressive, right? Well, Monster vs. Godzilla towers at nearly 400 feet and weighs about 100,000 tons, which is nearly as much as, say it with me now, your mother. Already we've got a size mismatch. Clover destroys buildings by bumping into them. Godzilla has been demolishing entire cities since the 1950s. He's got decades of experience on this rookie. Now imagine they meet. Maybe Clover's been making a mess of another city when Godzilla emerges from the ocean, sensing another alpha predator in his territory. The ground shakes with each step as the king approaches. Clover, having never faced another monster of similar size, might actually charge in confidently. Big mistake. The fight would be spectacular, but painfully one-sided. Clover might land some initial blows with its lanky limbs, maybe even draw blood with those claws. Its parasites would drop onto Godzilla's skin, trying to bite through his scales, but they'd be like mosquitoes trying to bite through a tank. And we all know what happens when Godzilla gets annoyed. His back spines light up blue. One blast of atomic breath would leave Clover screeching in agony. The raw nuclear energy would tear through the creature's hide like tissue paper. Remember how Clover flinched from conventional military weapons? Well, Godzilla's breath makes missiles look like spitballs, and unlike the military, Godzilla doesn't miss. If Clover somehow survived the first blast and tried to retreat, it would face another problem. Godzilla doesn't let challengers walk away. The king of monsters would pursue, demonstrating surprising speed for something his size. The fight would end with Godzilla either using his nuclear pulse to fry Clover and all its parasites at once, or simply overpowering it with his superior strength and experience. The most interesting aspect of this fight might actually be what happens after. Would Godzilla absorb radiation from Clover's remains? Would the parasites try to find a new host? Could Clover's extraterrestrial biology hold secrets even Godzilla hasn't encountered before? We'll never know, because all that would be left of Clover would be a smoking heap of monster parts scattered across several city blocks. Look, I love the Cloverfield monster. It gave us one of the most intense found footage movies ever, but against Godzilla, it's like bringing a knife to a nuclear war. Clover might be New York's nightmare, but it would just be a Thursday afternoon for the king of monsters. Sorry, Clover fans, your boy got outclassed. The Cloverfield monster might be impressive by human standards, but it's just another Tuesday for Godzilla. Our next contender, however, brings something completely different to the fight. This aerial predator doesn't just hunt, it turns the sky itself into a weapon. Can Godzilla handle an enemy that attacks from above, or will Jean Jacket add the king of monsters to its collection? Now, we're talking about something completely different. Jean Jacket from Nope isn't your typical monster. It's basically a flying alien jellyfish that pretends to be a cloud. Yeah, you heard that right. This thing floats around in the sky, looks like a cute puffy cloud, and then wham! It unfolds like some kind of cosmic horror origami and sucks you up like a living vacuum cleaner. Then it slowly digests you while making it rain blood. If that doesn't ruin your picnic plans, I don't know what will. What makes Jean Jacket so terrifying is its hunting strategy. It doesn't charge in like a bull. It waits silently above, completely camouflaged until it's ready to strike. And when it does, that suction power is no joke. It can pull up horses, people, even entire crowds into its its, well, I guess you'd call it a mouth, stomach, weird alien death tunnel. Whatever it is, once you're in there, you're not coming back out except as a rain of blood and non-digestible items like keys and coins. Charming. Jean Jacket does have one major weakness though. It hates being looked at directly. Make eye contact with this sky monster and it gets super aggressive. Oh, and it can also transform from its peaceful cloud shape into a terrifying squarish form that looks like something crossed a parachute with a nightmare. Not exactly something you want to see while cloud watching, is it? So how would this aerial hunter fare against the king of monsters? Well, let's picture the scene. Godzilla is walking through an open area when suddenly the sky darkens above him. Jean Jacket, seeing this massive potential meal, begins to position itself for the ultimate suction attack. Godzilla, with his animal instincts, might sense something's off, but not immediately identify the threat. Jean Jacket unfolds and activates its powerful suction. And nothing happens. Godzilla is simply too massive and heavy to be affected by the suction that easily captured horses and humans, just like your mother. It would be like trying to vacuum up your couch with a handheld dust buster. Not gonna happen, buddy. Jean Jacket might manage to create some wind around Godzilla's head, but maybe annoy him a bit, but that's about it. And that's where things go badly for our sky jellyfish. An annoyed Godzilla looks up, making direct eye contact with Jean Jacket, which we know drives it into a frenzy. Jean Jacket transforms into its aggressive form, but in doing so, it just makes itself a clearer target. Godzilla's spines light up blue and, well, you know what happens next. One blast of atomic breath later, and Jean Jacket is less terrifying sky predator and more rapidly expanding cloud of alien barbecue. If Jean Jacket somehow dodged the first blast, Godzilla wouldn't stop there. The king of monsters has surprising aim with that atomic breath, and he can fire it multiple times. Plus, Godzilla has fought plenty of flying enemies before. Rodan, King Ghidorah, various military aircraft. An angry space tarp isn't going to confuse him for long. The verdict? Jean Jacket is an apex predator when dealing with humans and small animals, but against Godzilla, it's just not in the same weight class. Its only advantages, stealth and suction, are rendered useless against Godzilla's mass and power. Sorry, Jordan Peele fans, but your sky monster just got grounded permanently. Jean Jacket might rule the skies, but even it has its limits against Godzilla's atomic breath. But what happens when we step beyond the physical realm and into the supernatural? Our next horror monster has been exploring the further regions of experience for decades, and he's got the chains and hooks to prove it. Can Godzilla survive an encounter with Hell's chief torturer? Pinhead, the nightmare from the Hellraiser movies who really took fashion statement to a whole new level with those nails hammered into his skull. If you've never had the pleasure of meeting this charming fellow, Pinhead is basically the leader of the Cenobites, which are demons who come from a dimension of pure pain and pleasure when someone solves a puzzle box called the Lament Configuration. Yeah, I don't know what the person was on when they made this movie, but it was something. His whole deal is showing up uninvited to your house party with his gang of leather-clad freaks, saying something creepy like, "We have such sights to show you," and then ripping your soul apart with hooks and chains. Not exactly the kind of guy you want to swipe right on if you catch my drift, but some of you probably will, because he's in leather. What makes Pinhead scary isn't his physical strength, it's his supernatural abilities. He can summon chains with hooks from thin air, travel between dimensions, and he's practically immortal. The dude has been blown up, shot, and torn apart only to come back for more sequels. Some good, most terrible. His main weapon is the puzzle box itself, that innocent looking cube that tricks curious people into summoning him. Once you've opened it, you've basically signed up for an internal torture session with the world's worst BDSM dungeon. So, could this supernatural sadist give Godzilla a run for his money? Well, there's one massive problem right off the bat. Pinhead only shows up when someone solves the puzzle box. Last time I checked, Godzilla doesn't have fine motor skills needed to solve puzzles. His claws are built for smashing things, not sliding around little gold pieces. So unless some idiot humans solve the box near Godzilla, and honestly, humans in monster movies make dumb decisions all the time, these two might never even meet. But let's say someone does solve the box while Godzilla is taking a nap nearby. Pinhead and his Cenomite pals show up in their black leather bondage gear, chains rattling, ready to claim another soul. Pinhead turns to deliver his spooky introduction and sees a 400-foot radioactive lizard instead of a trembling human. Talk about awkward. I imagine even Pinhead would have a moment of, well, this is a first. Pinhead might try his usual tricks, summoning chains to hook into Godzilla's flesh and tear him apart. But here's the thing, Godzilla's scales have withstood nuclear blasts. Some kinky chains from hell aren't gonna do much more more than annoy him. It would be like trying to catch a whale with a fishing hook meant for minnows. Pinhead's supernatural nature does give him one advantage though. He can't be killed by conventional means. But Godzilla isn't conventional in any sense of the word. That atomic breath isn't just hot. It's carrying nuclear radiation that has dropped monsters much scarier than a dude with pins in his head. One blast and Pinhead would be sent screaming back to his dimension, probably with a severe case of radiation poisoning as a souvenir. The real question is whether Pinhead could drag Godzilla into the Cenobite dimension, and the answer is probably not. Godzilla's sheer dummy thickness and power would make him nearly impossible to transport between realms without his cooperation. It would be like trying to fit an elephant through a cat door. The physics just don't work out. In the end, this isn't even close to a fair fight. Pinhead might be the Hell Priest who's tortured countless souls, but Godzilla is literally classified as a force of nature. Pinhead's best move would be look at the situation, say not today, close up his puzzle box, and go find some easier prey. Some battles just aren't worth fighting, even for the demons of hell. Physical pain might not be enough to stop Godzilla, but our next horror monster doesn't attack the body, it attacks the mind. This conceptual horror spreads like a virus, turning thoughts into weapons and belief into reality. Can Godzilla's raw power overcome something that isn't even fully physical? Now we're getting really weird, like really weird. I don't know how to say that, so you're just gonna get this.
Nyarlathotep
From The Empty Man isn't your standard monster that goes bump in the night. It's not even a physical thing you can punch or bite or blast with atomic breath. It's basically a spooky thought virus, a meme that kills. The original, this video will kill you in 7 days, but way more existential. The Empty Man spreads through a creepy ritual where you blow into an empty bottle on a bridge, then wait for the Empty Man to find you. Once it's in your head, it's like having the world's worst earworm, except instead of baby sharks stuck in your brain, it's an ancient cosmic horror that makes you do terrible things before eventually offing yourself. It's like if TikTok trends could actually murder you, but let's not give TikTok any ideas because there's probably a psycho out there that would actually do that. What makes the Empty Man so scary is that it doesn't need to sneak up on you or break down your door. You'll invite it in. It spreads through belief. The more people talk about it, the more powerful it gets. It's basically the supernatural version of that one celebrity who's only famous for being famous. No real talent, just really good at getting people to pay attention to it. So could this thought-based horror actually threaten Godzilla? Well, this is where things get interesting. Godzilla isn't human. He doesn't scroll through social media or whisper urban legends at sleepovers. He doesn't even have friends to tell him about the Empty Man challenge. And that's problem number one for our horror monster. How do you infect a creature that doesn't participate in human culture? But let's say somehow the Empty Man concept managed to reach Godzilla, maybe through some psychic connection or because Godzilla wandered too close to a group of infected humans. Would it work? Well, we need to consider Godzilla's mind. Throughout the movies, Godzilla has shown basic intelligence and animal instincts, but not complex human-style thinking. He doesn't seem to experience fear, doubt, or existential dread, which are the very emotions the Empty Man exploits. It's like trying to explain TikTok to your grandpa who's still using a flip phone. The concept just doesn't compute. The Empty Man relies on human psychology, on our fear of emptiness and meaninglessness. Godzilla's concerns are much simpler: territory, food, and occasionally saving the world from three-headed space dragons. His brain just isn't wired to be vulnerable to this kind of attack. Even if the Empty Man somehow managed to establish a foothold in Godzilla's consciousness, what then? Would it make Godzilla depressed? Huh? Really? That creature that tanked nuclear bombs and fought King Ghidorah isn't likely to start questioning its life choices because of a spooky thought. Godzilla's simple but powerful mind would likely just ignore or override any attempt at psychological manipulation. The Empty Man's one chance would be to infect enough humans to create a massive cult dedicated to somehow taking down Godzilla. But even then, good luck with that plan. Humans with their fancy militaries have been trying to kill Godzilla for decades with minimal success. A bunch of mind-controlled cultists aren't going to do much better. In the end, the Empty Man is scariest when it preys on human weaknesses, our fears, our need for meaning, and us being prone to suggestion. Against a creature like Godzilla who lacks these psychological vulnerabilities but is threatening as a motivational poster. Sometimes being a simple-minded giant radioactive lizard has its advantages. So the Empty Man's mind games might not be profound, but Godzilla's not exactly known for his deep thinking. However, our next opponent takes reality manipulation to a whole new level. This horror author doesn't just write write scary stories. He rewrites reality itself. Can Godzilla fight back when the very rules of his existence are being rewritten? We're turning the page to something truly mind-bending now. Sutter Kane from In the Mouth of Madness. If you've never seen this cult classic, Kane is basically Stephen King cranked up to 11 with a side of cosmic horror. He's not just an author who writes scary books. His writing literally changes reality. People who read his novels go insane, start seeing monsters, and eventually become part of his stories. It's like if your favorite author's latest book actually turns you into a character, and not in a fun cameo kind of way. Sutter Kane's power comes from his connection to ancient cosmic entities that allow his fiction to bleed into reality. The more people read his books, the stronger his influence becomes. By the end of the movie, entire towns have transformed into nightmare versions of themselves straight from his pages. Traffic lights change colors that don't exist. Buildings rearrange themselves. People mutate into monsters. It's basically reality's worst editing mistake with no undo button. So how would this reality-bending author fare against everyone's favorite atomic lizard? This is tricky because Sutter Kane's power depends on people reading his work. First, he'd need to write Godzilla verse the impossible, or something similarly ominous. Get it published and have millions of people read it. And I'm sorry, but have you seen Godzilla's claws? He's not exactly flipping through the latest bestseller in his spare time. But let's say Kane's book does become a worldwide hit. As reality starts warping, Godzilla might find himself in increasingly bizarre situations. Maybe the ocean he's swimming in suddenly turns to jello. Perhaps buildings he smashed rebuild themselves instantly. The sky might change colors or split open to reveal cosmic horrors beyond comprehension. Here's where Godzilla has a surprising advantage though, his simple mind. Throughout the monsterverse, Godzilla operates on basic animal instincts with some higher level thinking thrown in. He's not contemplating the meaning of life or wondering if we live in a simulation. When reality starts breaking down around humans in Kane's stories, their complex minds can't handle it and they go insane. But Godzilla, he'd probably just be confused, then irritated, then angry. And an angry Godzilla is a dangerous Godzilla. If a weird tentacle monster started popping up because of Kane's influence, Godzilla would just see them as more challenges to fight. Buildings morphing into impossible shapes, those are just different things to smash. The laws of physics breaking down, well, Godzilla never really cared about physics anyways. Like, let's be honest, he's a nuclear-powered lizard who shoots atomic breath. This dude does not play by the rules. The real question is whether Sutter Kane could write specific weaknesses into Godzilla or control him directly through his stories. Based on the movie, Kane's power works best when amplifying fears and warping existing reality, not necessarily rewriting established characters completely. He might be able to create situations to trouble Godzilla, but fundamentally changing what Godzilla is, that's a tall order. In the end, this weird confrontation might come down to scale. Sutter Kane's influence is powerful, but still somewhat localized, affecting towns or regions. Godzilla operates on a global level. If Kane tried to trap Godzilla in a fictional reality, Godzilla might simply smash his way out of the affected area, stomping through the boundaries of Kane's influence as if they were like paper walls. But even more ironically, Godzilla could just destroy all the printing presses and bookstores carrying Kane's work. You can't warp reality if nobody can read your books, right? Check and mate, Mr. Bestseller. Sometimes the simplest solution is just to stomp everything. Surviving Sutter Kane's fictional reality is impressive, but the cosmic horrors are just getting started. Our next entity isn't just ancient, it's one of the old gods, a being of such immense power that its mere existence requires human sacrifice just to keep it dormant. Can the king of monsters stand against something that threatens reality itself? Now we're diving deep into cosmic horror with the old god from the cabin in the woods. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, first of all, what are you doing with your life? It's one of the most clever horror films ever made. Second, spoiler alert, but the movie's been out for over a decade, so that's on you, buddy. The old gods in this movie are basically ancient, cranky deities who sleep beneath the earth. They're so powerful that humans created an entire global organization dedicated to sacrificing people just to keep these cosmic grumps hitting the snooze button. It's like the world's most extreme customer service. Please don't destroy everything. Here's some sacrificial teenagers to make you happy. What makes the old gods truly terrifying is their scale. We only see a glimpse, literally just a giant hand emerging from the ground in the movie's final moments. But it's made very clear that if these beings fully reawaken, it's game over for everyone. The entire facility filled with monsters, yeah, those are just their pets. The complex ritual of sacrificing specific character archetypes, the virgin, the fool, the athlete, etc., that's just their room service order. These beings don't just destroy, they unmake reality itself. So how would Godzilla fare against something that can just end the world by simply waking up? Well, first of all, Godzilla would completely ruin the sacrificial ritual just by showing showing up. Imagine the control room operators frantically flipping through their monster catalog. Where's the section on what to do if a 400-foot radioactive lizard crashes your carefully planned apocalypse prevention ceremony? Pretty sure that's not in their handbook. But let's say the ritual fails and the old god begins to reawaken. As that massive hand pushes through the earth, Godzilla might actually recognize this as a territorial challenge. Throughout the monsterverse, Godzilla is portrayed as Earth's defender against external threats. He maintains balance and protects the natural order. An old god emerging to destroy everything? That's exactly the kind of thing that gets Godzilla's radioactive blood pumping. The fight would be unlike anything we've seen in a Godzilla movie. The old god represents a cosmic, almost abstract threat. It's not just another monster to grapple with. Godzilla's atomic breath might damage the physical manifestation of the old god, but would it be enough to drive it back into slumber? That's where things get tricky. In the cabin in the woods, it's suggested that the old gods operate on rules and rituals. They require specific sacrifices performed in specific ways. This implies that they have limitations. They're powerful, but not omnipotent. And if there's one thing Godzilla excels at, it's exploiting his enemies' limitations. He's been doing it for nearly 70 years across dozens of films. But the most likely outcome? A stalemate. The old god might not be able to fully manifest with Godzilla actively fighting against it, but Godzilla might struggle to permanently defeat something so cosmic in nature. It would be less a battle of physical strength and more a clash between primal forces, the defender of Earth against an ancient destroyer from beyond comprehension. In the end, humanity might find itself in the strange position of rooting for the monster that usually stomps in their cities. Because if it comes down to Godzilla or the end of existence, well, a few crushed buildings suddenly don't seem so bad, do they? The old god might be immensely powerful, but Godzilla has defied the odds before. However, our final challenger represents the ultimate cosmic horror, a great old one whose very appearance drives humans to madness. Cthulhu has been the stuff of nightmares for nearly a century, but can this eldritch abomination finally dethrone the king of monsters? Now we go underwater to reach the final boss. This is the heavyweight championship of monster battles. In one corner, weighing in at 100,000 tons, the king of monsters himself. And in the other corner, well, we're not entirely sure because looking directly at him drives you completely insane. That's right, we're talking about Cthulhu, the squid-faced cosmic horror from the mind of H.P. Lovecraft. If you've never heard of Cthulhu, just imagine an octopus, a dragon, and your worst existential crisis had a baby. That's not even close to how terrible it is, but your brain would melt if I described it accurately. Cthulhu isn't just a big monster, it's an ancient cosmic entity that sleeps in the underwater city of R'lyeh. Think of it like this: if Godzilla is a force of nature, Cthulhu is a force of un-nature. It doesn't just exist in our reality, it warps reality around it. People who merely glimpse Cthulhu or even dream about it go completely bonkers. It has cults of devoted followers who worship it through the centuries, patiently waiting for when the stars are aligned and it can fully reawaken. So what happens when these two titans clash? Unlike our previous matchups, this one isn't so clear-cut. For the first time, Godzilla might actually be outclassed. Let's break down why. First, there's the physical battle. Just like your mother, Cthulhu is massive, with wings and tentacles and claws. A physical match for Godzilla's strength and size, but physical combat is just the beginning. When Cthulhu rises from the ocean depths, the laws of physics start to bend. Angles that shouldn't exist suddenly do. Colors appear that have no name. The very fabric of reality begins to tear. Godzilla's atomic breath? Yeah, it's incredibly powerful, but it exists within the rules of our universe. Cthulhu exists partially outside those rules. It's like trying to delete a computer virus by shooting your laptop with a gun. You're using the wrong tool for the problem. Then there's the mental aspect. Throughout the movies, Godzilla has shown animal-like intelligence. He can strategize, recognize allies and enemies, and even seemingly form bonds with humans. But this basic intelligence might actually make him vulnerable to Cthulhu's mind-warping influence. Humans go insane when they perceive Cthulhu because our minds can't process its impossible existence. Godzilla's simpler but still complex brain might suffer a similar fate. The battle might start conventionally. Godzilla, sensing a disturbance in the ocean, swimming towards R'lyeh as cultists complete their ritual to reawaken the Great Old One. As Cthulhu rises, Godzilla would likely charge in, spines glowing with atomic energy. The initial clash would shake the Earth, create tsunamis, and possibly shift the planet's orbit slightly. You know, just another Tuesday for cosmic entities. But as the fight continues, something strange would happen. Reality itself would start to unravel around them. Godzilla's atomic breath might pass through Cthulhu without effect, or perhaps hit something that wasn't even there. The ocean might turn to gas, then something our human words can't describe. And Godzilla, for the first time in his long existence, might feel something new: confusion. then fear. In the end, this isn't a battle Godzilla can win through strength alone. At best, he might force Cthulhu back into its slumber temporarily. At worst, the king of monsters himself might be driven mad, becoming a pawn in Cthulhu's incomprehensible game. Some enemies can't be defeated by atomic breath and a good tail swipe, and Cthulhu is definitely one of them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know down below exactly what you think of my monster battles. Do you think Godzilla could beat Cthulhu? Tell me why in the comments down below. If you want to watch more videos just like this, click the video on screen now.